Good morning and welcome to WNHH FM's Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make New Haven tick. Mayor Toni Hart makes New Haven tick morning and night. And these days, sort of like sub-morning, morning, late morning, early afternoon, weekend. She's everywhere these days. And she's here in the WNHH studio for her weekly Mayor Monday checkup, which she and we are up in the Elm City. And we have a guest she's brought with her in our new approach to bringing city administration into these shows. Fire Chief John Alston, who tends to light up the social media networks when he comes on WNHH, but the pressure's on. We got to hear from Dubai today and New Jersey and some other points east and west. Chief, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here with my mayor.
And good morning, Mayor Harp. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Happy you're here. And if you have a question for the mayor, feel free to pop it via Facebook Live on the New Haven Independent Facebook page. That's where you go. You'll see the video. Thanks to Gateway Community College, Birch and Moses PC for providing financial support for today's program. Mayor Harp, you had a busy weekend.
Oh, it was busy. Yeah. A lot of stuff.
Started Friday night. Big breakthrough. For 3 years, the police department did not have a contract. There were tough issues the city had to resolve. That how do you pay the cops enough so that we don't keep losing the suburbs, but at the same time, what do we pay what we can afford? After 3 years of no contract binding arbitration, you settled it, and they voted overwhelmingly. That was like something like 300 something to, I guess 100 something to 30 or something. It was a lopsided vote.
259, I think 213, something like that.
So that's really something. So people were happy with it. What caused the breakthrough? First of all, congratulations. That's a big deal.
Well, I think it really took leadership. I've got to say that Officer Florencio Cotto,
that's the new head of the police union.
Right. They were in binding arbitration, and he decided that it was best to start really trying to negotiate directly with the city, and sort of stepped away briefly from binding arbitration, and we were able to come up with something that worked for both the city as well as I think is a great contract for our police department.
So what was the breakthrough? I mean, how did you settle the issues of they're worried about their long-term health benefits and they're worried about their pay? And the city was making a good case because both sides thought you had a good case to the arbitrator that we couldn't afford to give them what they wanted. I think it's a 6-year contract, 2 to 2.5% a year, pay increase going back retroactively the 3 years. What did the city get and what did they get?
Well, certainly they knew that they would probably get what Bridgeport got in terms of a pay raise, and that would be about 9.5 over the life of the contract.
Over 6 years.
Over 6 years.
See, I'm so bad at math. I was counting it last night, and I saw like 2.52. Over 6 years, I couldn't get anything under 2, but I kept. How does it 9.5 instead of 12?
Well, no. I'm talking about Bridgeport. And so with our contract,
an extra year.
They got an extra year, and they got 13.5.
Okay.
And so they knew that with arbitration, they were only going to get that. They also had some other issues that they wanted to put on the table that they discovered needed to be negotiated after they had done gone into binding arbitration. And in binding arbitration, you can only discuss
best offer.
And also the things that you say are going to be discussed in binding arbitration, and they realized that there were other things, some pension benefits and other kinds of things that, and we had some things too. So it worked for both of us.
So what did each side? Because obviously, any successful negotiation, both sides feel like they got something. They can't get everything they want.
Sure.
But yeah, you both have to feel like you got something. What did they get and what you got? They got the pay increase.
They got the pay increase. They also got to have overtime taken into consideration. They got retroactive.
What do you mean into consideration for their pension?
No, well, into consideration for dollars that we actually give them back for previous years. In other words, so if you worked overtime, we would basically reimburse you for the amount that you worked back a couple of years. So they got that. We wanted it to just be half of overtime. They wanted it to be 100%, and so they got the 100%.
I'm confused about that. Don't they get paid overtime at the time they? I'm sorry.
I mean the retroactive. In other words, for the pay increase, because we went.
Oh, they got the pay increase of the overtime.
Yeah.
For those years. Okay,
yes.
That's fair. Yeah.
So, okay, I'm sorry I didn't make that clear.
That's okay. I'm not super versed. I'm not unlike John Alston here. I'm not really super
Oh, wait a minute.
versed. And you know all this stuff about labor contracts. You've been doing this since you were like -5.
Well, if you talk to most folks, they say I don't. So mine's not settled
Talking
yet.
to you about contracts in 5 minutes, I learned more than like I've forgotten over the last 20
Oh,
years.
buddy.
I'm sorry, pressure's on you still. We haven't heard from anyone from Dubai yet. Just let me know. Okay, so
And so the thing that we got for everyone coming in, all the new police officers, is that we got 20 years and the age 52, and I think
for retirement.
For retirement, I think 25 years and 52.
What does that mean? If you're under 20 years but you're 52, you can retire, or you have to be 52 at least to retire?
You have to.
Your
You
pension
have
kicks
to. You
in
have
when-
to do at least 25 years.
Oh, 25 years. Yeah.
Or you have to be 52.
So in other words, if you started at 32, you could retire at 52. But most people start in their 20s.
They could. So but then they have to go 25 years. We also gave them the ability to buy back time for military service. That's something they got, and for city service. So if they ever worked for the city, it's sort of like a sick time buyback.
And then a lot of people were retiring last couple of years because of fears of what would be in the new contract. And one of their big issues, I believe, was medical benefits when they retire, correct?
Right. And
so how did that shake out?
I think it shaked out fine, and that they got the medical benefits that they wanted. So it will accrue to their families once they retire. And I think that was the big issue. And there was another pension issue around whether or not, say, a person retired, passed away, whether or not their spouse would get benefits. And so I believe that's in the contract too.
And then didn't we get some kind of health saving account change that we have with all the other city unions? Another fire union had it?
We did, but they wanted that.
And what was that exactly, Chief Alston, about health savings accounts? I'm always confused about how that works.
Well, basically, they get to bank money into an account that if they don't use, it accrues for them.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at some other issues.
But do they do that instead of what? Do they have a choice between a health savings account and traditional insurance?
Well,
They can choose, but I think most of them want it. It's more expensive to have traditional insurance, but they're young, and health savings accounts work for young people because you typically, if you think about when you get sick, it's usually in your 50s. Most of these folks have retired by then.
And then it saves the city money, the HSAs, right?
Yes.
Okay,
right.
so that's
it gives them
everyone
greater
win.
flexibility too.
Yeah.
What they
Right.
want.
And if they really take care of themselves, they have a little extra savings that they can take when they retire.
And Chief, when was the latest fire contract struck?
It was June of 2018 last year.
And how many years does it last?
That one I believe was signed in 2011.
No, I mean like how many years till the next one?
Oh, we're in negotiations right now.
And
We're
when
gonna
does
be
it
closing
expire?
It expired already, June of 2018.
Oh, so you're working without a contract there.
Right.
Do any
Yeah.
kind of momentum we'll get? Any breakthroughs you see in the successful police negotiation that might help you with the fire
We've had
union?
some really fruitful talks, even prior to them coming out of arbitration. We've got a negotiation meeting again. I believe we're very close. There's been some good dialogue. The mayor has weighed in on several of the issues that concerned us as the city and concerned the firefighters as well. So.
Well, this was a big deal in town, the police contracts. So it's good to have that behind us. And you don't even have to worry for another 3 years, right? Because it's a 6-year contract, 3 retroactive, 3 looking ahead, correct?
And yeah, we don't have to worry. And we've already heard from some police officers who were thinking of retiring that they're going to stay.
All right, so we're going to see
Well,
the
that's really
Exodus
good.
stuff. All right.
Yeah.
And we're talking about that on Dateline New Haven, WNHH-FM. It's Mayor Monday. Bob McCormick asks, with this new contract, okay, I think you just answered this, but thanks for the question. With this new contract, how can we make sure officers won't leave for other departments? Now, they probably don't get paid the exact same as Hampton still because they needed a $20,000 increase to get like that, or New Canaan or Westport. Does it just put us in the ballpark so that if you're excited about working in an urban department where you do more interesting work, it'll be enough to make the difference?
I think so, and that a lot of the police departments that are recruiting our folks, they have higher salaries, but they don't have a defined benefit pension, and we do.
All right. So something else this weekend, you had a gun anti-violence rally at the state courthouse yesterday,
Yes,
and that was Moms Against Guns.
Moms Against Guns. Yeah,
Is that a New Haven group? Because we hadn't heard about this before it
it's a
happened.
national group,
All right. So
and
you and
there
Senator
is a
Blumenthal
group
there?
in New Haven, but they have chapters all across the state and all across the nation.
And you
so-
were there calling for greater restrictions on gun ownership, correct? And background checks, that kind of stuff.
Right. And, and actually asking the Senate to go back into session and to pass these things. They've been passed by the House already, and they're ready to be passed by the Senate. And, when you think about all of these mass shootings that we've had in the past 2 or 3 weeks, Gilroy, I always think about Gilroy. I know people don't think of it, but it's like the garlic capital of the world, probably. And whenever you drive through there,
I'm sorry, through where?
Gilroy, California.
Okay.
They had one there. They had one in Dayton, Ohio, and in El Paso, and and then we have shootings in our urban areas across America every day that people just forget. And so when you pool all of those together, there are about 100 people who are killed by guns every single day in our country, and we're supposed to be a free country. But if you're not free to live because you're going to get a stray bullet or you're going to be killed by a bullet, it's a problem for the way in which we see ourselves and the way in which people feel safe. We come together for safety, and if people don't feel safe, then it's a problem. And frankly, for us, what we've seen is that people bring legal guns across state lines, and they bring them into New Haven. They bought them legally someplace down south, mostly.
You need federal rules.
You need federal
rules. So the measures
rules.
we're talking about, Mayor Harp, universal background checks, red flag laws, like we already have in Connecticut,
Right.
where someone's like going to be a danger to themselves or others, the
Right.
judge can take the gun away. And is it also an assault rifle ban, or what's the third one?
That one is not in the bill, but it should be.
What is the third measure?
I think you named them all.
Okay.
The red flag laws and the and background checks.
And meanwhile, you stood on a pier and no one fell in the water. Fort Hale Park, right?
Yep.
Is it true no one fell in the water?
Nobody fell in the water.
Okay.
The only thing that fell out of the water were lots of little fish and a beautiful little crab that I saw. That was, I think she must have been like 6 or 7. She caught it. She said, "I caught that crab."
And what this was you finished phase 2 of rebuilding the Fort Hale Pier. Did that get destroyed in one of our superstorms?
It did, yes. And it's been, I think, in 2012. I can't remember the name of the storm, but it's been a long time. And what is amazing is it's the best pier in Connecticut. And it was the best pier before we had to rebuild it. But now it's really the best pier because there's that T on the pier. I don't know whether or not people have seen it, and there's also on the pier places to clean your fish. And so, and I thought, there were a lot of people there for, our ribbon cutting to indicate that we'd finished phase 2. But when I went along the pier, I thought that people had come for that, and they just happened to be fishing. No, those were real fishers that are there.
Oh, people
every
definitely. People
single
eat from the water.
day.
Yeah. Are you a fisherman, Chief Austin?
Not for many, many years. My sons were very small. Stoke State Park, and when I was younger, we literally would fish in the shadow of the Statue of Liberty, right off of Weeks Pier.
That's the one I learned last week. Give us your tired masses as long as they can have a lot of money and can not need benefits.
Yeah, it seems like people are trying to translate that and re-engineer history. But yeah, I actually grew up in the shadow of the Statue of Liberty. Yeah.
All right. And then you also had the big New Haven Beat the Rap concert. You heard a lot about it beforehand, and if you read the New Haven Independent, you read about it afterwards, which was a great concert highlighting both local hip-hop and R&B, but like Avery Wilson, who I didn't know about. I'm not going to act like I'm hip, and I know. But apparently there's this big R&B singer, and Avery Wilson. I was watching the videos. It's really good. And they brought in a national act I'd never heard of. Maybe you had PNB. They're apparently big shots. Yep.
Yeah.
They came in, and it was the field house was packed. Marshall Cruz had a great review about it in the Independent, said it was a really kind of loving, happy night in New Haven of people just packed, having a great time grooving, and showed that we can do this. It got changed because the crowd was a lot bigger than was originally expected.
Right.
So they wanted to have it when there were enough extra duty police. The fire department get called in on events like this too, or no?
Oh, absolutely.
And why?
Anytime there are large events.
Oh, right.
Because
occupancy.
Not only the occupancy, but the number of people in a concentrated area. You want to make sure that you have emergency medical resources on hand as well.
Was there any need last Thursday night for this?
No, actually, it was a phenomenal concert. I was there from start to finish.
Which group did you like?
I like them all, but I believe because I'm past 50, the music just sounds different to me.
What struck me was that there was a lot of melody in it.
Yeah,
Now I'm
oh,
sounding
of
like an old
course.
fart here, but like it seemed like hip hop kind of adds the melody, right?
Oh yeah,
Oh,
well,
thank-
you
yeah.
have the trap genre now, so the kids are into that. And I say kids because I'm old,
Yeah.
and
Let's
but
face it, we're all kind of like different
it
generation.
was-
We were like Aretha Franklin generation. But
yeah.
one thing I've noticed when you say trap,
Mhm.
I've noticed a lot of music that one of the instruments are the machines that do the beats. And while rhythm was always essential to all this music, it seems like it all begins and ends with the beat they start with.
Yeah.
And that people patent the beat and then build on it. Am I right about that?
Correct. Well, I was a DJ back in the day, and
Oh,
they
you were?
they sample a lot of the music now. But what I did find about these artists that we had last week, they had original melodies. They had original tunes. Avery was phenomenal.
I was watching his
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
He was good.
Yeah.
And he's a New Haven guy.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And
There's great music in New Haven. And, we honored and gave the key to the city to Troy Taylor, who most people hadn't heard of.
I've never heard of Troy Taylor.
I never
Oh,
heard of him
man.
either. He's big. He went to Hill House High School and grew up in New Haven, went to all of our public schools, and he is one of the biggest producers of music in this country.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where's he living now?
I think he lives in Atlanta.
Atlanta.
Wow.
But he was in Jersey for a while too because he worked with Whitney Houston.
And when and where were
Yeah.
you DJing?
Oh, back in the day, Salem Community Center I started, and then
In Newark?
no, Jersey City, man.
Oh, that's right. I forgot.
Yeah.
Sorry. And what year are we
You're gonna
talking?
start. You're gonna start this early in the morning.
Sorry. What year was that, Chief?
Oh, I started when I was 14 years old, 1974,
Okay.
and I did that for
That
about
was a heyday
33
for us.
years. Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, the stylistics are out then, right?
Stylistics,
And Chai Lights.
Cool
and,
and the Gang was 4
yeah.
blocks from my house. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh,
Had
yeah.
they hit yet in 74?
Yeah.
Because wasn't 78 their big celebrate?
Yeah. But you know what? They were singing out of Lincoln High School, right down the street from my house,
Wow.
with the Majestic. Shout out to Jersey
Oh, I remember
City.
the Majestics. Yeah. Wow. From DJ to Fire Chief, John Alston.
And that's something.
Joining Mayor Tony Harp here on Mayor Monday.
Hey.
So, folks, Harry, we're going to cue this up now, okay? Oh, we're here on Mayor Monday. Fire Chief John and Bob had another question we'll get back to. We had a Fire Chief Alston and Tony Harper going to tell us about some new developments in the fire department, but I'd like to give them a nice surprise
Okay.
with the video of the week. Harry, can we show it to him here? Play it. Thanks. And I do have the right one up. This is in Brookside, a tiny cat inside a PVC pipe.
Oh yeah.
Check this out.
Wait.
New Haven Fire Department and New Haven PD. Great job. UI.
Watch this little cat. Look how
This
they
is
saved
a-
the life they captured
This is
inside
a
a
rescue
PVC pipe.
out of a soil pipe. We got the call over the weekend, and they are giving it oxygen and assisting with respiration.
I must feel like keeper.
That's what I was
There
just
you go.
thinking.
Well, you keep her. I'm moving. I'm selling my house.
Now, I've watched that a lot of times. Thanks, Harry.
hmm
What does it mean he's selling his house?
Say again?
What does he mean he's selling his house? They're obviously really excited they saved this little kitten's
Oh,
life.
sure. I didn't know what he meant by that, but
He was happy he
I-
saved the kitten. He
I
wanted
got-
the kitten.
I got the call from the crew on how they want to approach. I reached out to Chief Vendetto because this had actually hit social media, and we were getting all kinds of calls.
What it was a little tiny kitten. Well, I haven't seen that little. Trapped in a PVC pipe at the Brookside Housing Development, correct?
Correct.
On a Sunday morning before last.
Correct.
And what happened exactly? So you started hearing about this.
Well, the problem was that there was electrical conduit running alongside there as well. And before you dig anywhere, any place in the United States, you always have to make sure that they're not gas lines.
Mm.
So the firefighters really wanted to get in right away, but we needed to get the utility companies there. And believe it or not, even though it was a tiny kitten, you have to have a rescue plan. You have to make sure that you have lockout, tag out, make sure the energy systems are de-energized, that someone is watching the rescuers as well. Because many times you'll get an animal that's trapped in some of these areas. Most times they can get out on their own. If not, that one obviously was so tiny, but it drew so much attention in the city that we knew we were going to make some type of plan to get it out.
So what you did is first you found out that you could dig there.
Correct.
And that's why you mentioned UI.
Oh, yeah.
So you decided to dig, and the police couldn't get him out, right? Didn't the police officers try to coax him out?
Correct.
So then it was up to the fire department to make the rescue.
Of course.
So you came out,
Yeah.
and first you have some people who dig, right?
He always overstates the obvious here.
Okay. So you dug to get at the pipe.
Yes.
And then what happened next?
Well, they looped some type of contraption, it's my understanding, to pull the kitten up. But of course, anytime that you go subterranean, There's the possibility of methane gases, sewer gases that collect, especially on hot days. That even a person who goes into an area like that may need oxygen or resuscitation. So to be on the safe side, we treat animals like people.
All right, so you got him out. And then one thing I was kind of interested about knowing a little more was the 2 steps. There seemed to be a mixture of water and oxygen to save this cat, right? Why the water first and then the oxygen mask?
Well, the water to clean them up, just in case they got soil or dirt in their mouths, that kind of thing. You're trying to sanitize the little guy as well, and then providing oxygen. We do have pet masks on our apparatus.
Really?
Yeah, we have canine masks that we introduced about 2 years ago. But that particular animal was too small for that type of thing.
That's
So,
the small. Have you ever seen a cat that small?
No.
yeah, I'm
Like a mouse.
cat guy. Yeah, they come out that small.
It was so sweet. He obviously won the heart pretty quick of those firefighters.
Oh, yeah.
How often do you do that? Save cats and dogs?
Well, we haven't had a lot of calls like that. And the old thing that they used to say was firefighters would get cats out of trees, and some of the older veteran firefighters said, well, if the cat got up there, the cat can get down. Eventually they get hungry. We're not going up there. But believe it or not, many times pets are like people to families.
No
to-
question.
So,
But one thing I've always noticed is how much like cops get a lot of flack. Like people love cops, and people also have a lot of bias against cops. They feel, sometimes. But
That's 'cause they don't know 'em. Yeah.
firefight. I think it's the nature of the work. Because they got to arrest people, right?
yeah, not
Like cops
always.
got. But I mean, part of their job is you're part of the job is sometimes someone has to be arrested, right? You take
Sure.
their liberty away. Whereas firefighters are always rescuing people. You get to be heroes all the time. People love firefighters. I think that's part of the reason.
Well,
yeah.
Yeah, but you know what? I've read some of the comments in the Independent.
Oh, there's always one or two
Not
people who are
everybody loves
angry. I think it's
firefighters.
99%. I think it's 99%. Don't
Yeah.
you?
I think it's different because we're entering people's homes on a regular basis. And we always have this line of delineation. When people hurt people, you need law enforcement. When things hurt people, you need you need firefighters or EMS. And so since New Haven, shout out to New Haven Fire Department, responds on emergency medical calls, all types of hazards, we have a lot more contact in our communities and districts. Plus the fact that the children walk by the firehouses all the time. They want to
Right.
touch the truck. The firefighters are great about inviting them in. So you have that connection. And so when there's an emergency, they just naturally will gravitate towards us as opposed to law enforcement.
And obviously, this is I mean, Tony, you notice this many decades over your work in public life. Increasingly, the fire department is a medical service.
Right.
That now 80% of the calls. I mean, when you were starting legislating, I don't believe it was 80% of the fire department's calls were medical.
No, I don't believe so. But, they've always been high here in New Haven because the fire department has always been the first responder.
And one of the challenges, and tell me if I got this right, is that the fire department gets there faster than anybody, so they can more easily save that life that might not have been saved. But it's very expensive having all these trucks. You did like I believe another ambulance, some more tactical machinery, so it wouldn't cost quite as much. But that's a big cost driver in the department. You have a new memorandum of understanding.
Correct.
MOU.
Yeah.
With the fire union, which was hard to get to, just like the police contract, because there were tough issues on both sides. How does this address the issue of the 80% of fire calls and the expense?
So you hit the nail on the head when you made mention that early on the fire service did not do a lot of medical calls. They always did in New Haven. You always had the emergency units. You had your tactical units. What we've seen the trend with new building codes, construction, fires are not as high or
Thank God.
frequent. Yeah, we're catching them in early stages with smoke alarms, detectors, building codes, but we still get some pretty devastating fires. What we've been preparing for is that we have 2 emergency units that crisscross the city. The national average for a department our size is about 2,500 runs. Ours are doing upwards of almost 6,000 runs.
What's the reason?
Because the increased number of calls and demand for medical. I know with the Affordable Care
And that's
Act,
6,000 runs a year for the 2 of them.
Plus,
correct.
don't we have an older population in New Haven,
We
which
have
might be
what we
another
call
reason?
the older and special population. So if you've noticed, there's been an increase in the number of people that have allergies, an increase in the number of people that have respiratory issues, and our elderly population. We have our special population. So anytime you come to an urban center, you're going to have that increase. What we're looking to do with that MOU was to increase our technical capabilities by having a heavy rescue And
What does it mean to have a heavy rescue?
So a heavy rescue unit, we have the 2 squads that crisscross the city as well. I mean, they're running, and many times the 2 of them are called to the same call. We've got excessive brake repairs, leaf springs that are breaking because they're carrying water and heavy equipment. Also, no unit in the city that has the capability of suppression can pass up a fire. So if you had a squad that actually came across a fire and began to pump the fire, we lose that asset because now they're tied to the fire. So by having a heavy rescue, an independent technical rescue, expands our capabilities, but also does not tie us up at a fire. But also part of that MOU was to get a 3rd paramedic unit, which we're going to staff at the Dixwell station on Gough Street. We're going to run it there for a few months and check the data. We may move it to another area of the city, but at the very least, it will immediately begin to divide that workload of those 2 paramedic units that are really beating in the crap beat out of them.
Now, you said that we have those 2 paramedic units combined do 6,000 runs a year.
No.
Oh.
They do almost 6,000
each.
Yeah.
And what was that comparing to 2,500 average for units covering the same amount of size?
Yeah, correct.
And so they're going to divide that. And how does that help us with staffing? Does that help our costs at all?
Initially, it does help us with cost because you won't have as many people booking off. We'll have an effective, we started a rotation plan for our EMTs and paramedics because we also have to look at paramedic burnout. This is the 1-year anniversary of the mass
right, we're talk about that in a minute.
On the green, where you had the same crews responding within hours, 8 to 9 victims.
And that's when over 120 transports to the hospital, people have been poisoned by a bad batch of K2. Only 47 individuals, they kept coming back, which was one of the more interesting parts of that.
A little higher than that. It's about 59.
59.
But we've got some data that we're running as well, scrubbing to get that clean. But you think about it, with our work schedule, that's 3 days. You had the same crew that responded.
Well, I remember you were giving them breaks. You felt it was important because of burnout. That
made it mandatory.
Every few hours you had them do something else for a while.
Correct.
So they weren't just losing it. They could be at the top of their game.
But they were so dedicated, they were calling back on the phone and the radio saying, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready. You literally have to make sure that they're off. So by dividing the workload, putting in a rotation plan, what it does is it keeps our people healthier. It reduces the amount of stress. Ergo, they don't book off as much. And we have to look at those injuries that our people suffer that aren't physical.
Yeah. Well, that sounds great to modernize it. I know I'm guessing with the upcoming contract negotiations, tell me if I'm wrong, an ongoing issue in New Haven for decades has been how we do more using the fire department than other cities do for responding to medical calls. And that's because we get there quicker. We'll more often send a fire unit rather than just the ambulance unit. And the argument has been there, if it's your grandmother who's that one time who got saved, how can you not justify the expense? And the other argument being, can we afford to do, is that still going to be?
Well, it's not just that. We're responding to the types of calls we never responded to before. We're not getting the bumps, the bruises, the difficulty breathing, the cuts, the bleeds, the slips, trips, and falls. We're getting people that have a multitude of issues. They're on different medications. They have several different conditions: hypertension, diabetes, and a heart condition. So you can't rely on just that medical unit responding with Narcan or oxygen or medication. We're bringing an emergency room to your front door.
Yeah.
We're bringing people that are capable to stop the bleeding, start the breathing, and to treat for shock. But we're also bringing those that have narcotics and advanced medical training that can assist and start the handiwork of the doctors right there.
And of course, every city in the country and rural areas dealing with these issues. When I saw you guys on the green this morning, you had a crew right across there. You had 3 units there for a collapse on the green.
Correct.
So Mayor Harp and Chief Alston, by the way, we're talking to Mayor Harp and Fire Chief Alston on Mayor Monday, WNHH 103.5 FM, live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. It is a year since those collapses on the green. I did get chewed out by the public health people at Yale for calling it overdoses. It's supposed to be called poisonings because they didn't take too much of it. It's a medical term. But in any case, looking back at that 1 year, what are we doing now that we've learned from that incident that's getting us more in control of this issue?
Well, one of the things that we did with many of the providers around the city and as well the state, we have a task force that is chaired by the Commissioner of Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, and myself, and we meet on a monthly basis. And we started out looking at our service delivery system, which was robust, but there were a number of connections that just weren't there. And so we recognized that we need to have a street psychiatrist who can prescribe on the spot throughout our city, because we have so many people who come to New Haven for substance treatment, and depending upon, particularly methadone, depending upon how that is dispersed and whether or not clean or dirty urines are allowed, oftentimes these people, if it's a place where they allow dirty urines, they are fodder, from my perspective, for drug dealers.
Right. The issue being that, and this is a debate within the public health community about
Right.
whether you should allow dirty urines and get methadone. I think there are strong arguments on both sides. They both cite research, but in any case, we're the ones who allow it, so we get everyone coming here.
Well, at least in our biggest
And
facilities.
if you have dirty urines, it means you are using the street drugs.
And so, like the people who deal the street drugs know that.
Know that.
So one of the things that we are doing, we're enhancing our street outreach work and case management that goes on the streets, so that we can be working directly with folks, particularly who are downtown on the green. We recognize that we don't have a recovery center, and we don't have a place that reinforces recovery in New Haven. So we're in the process of trying to identify a space and get the resources which have been promised to us by the state to develop a recovery center.
That means you don't have to spend all the money to go to the hospital. Sometimes people just need to chill out for a little while and get evaluated, right?
And not
Triage.
only that, like if you're in recovery, you need to be in a place where they support that.
Instead of some drug dealer place on the bench.
Yeah. Instead of that, and you need to get case management. If you don't have a job, you need to be aided in trying to find a job.
There was talk about the Church Street side of 900 Chapel. I know those storefronts open and close with pretty regularity. Is that where you're looking?
We're looking close to downtown, and so far I don't believe that we've found the spot. I think right now we sort of have an interim spot in a music program that sort of works with
Temple
people.
Street?
Yes. And so
Across from the movie theater.
Right. And so we're doing some of that. People can go in there, they can get support. But we really have to have recovery center in New Haven. There's one in Hartford and Bridgeport, and we're working to get that. But in the meantime, also, people need to know where to go to get help. And so we're going before the Board of Alders. We're going to have some information, some of this kind of information that basically says, if you need help, where you can go and get it. And certainly we know that you can get it at Cornell Scott, but there'll be phone numbers. And you'll see these things on the streets and on signs throughout the city of New Haven. So because, as I said before, we have a rich service delivery system, oftentimes people don't know how to access that. And so that's one of the things that we've been working on.
And I'm going to pivot to Chief Alston in a minute about data. But in the last year, just in my personal observation, what I was most interested in, all that discussion about ideas of what would make it better, there was no discussion of it the 1 year later, which was your idea, which was to allow doctors to be able to prescribe methadone individually in their offices, so that you don't have these centers where people wait for hours and congregate and become prey for drug. Because obviously you need to regulate it so there's not abuse, but you got to do that at centers too.
You do.
So what's up with? I know that you can't decree that. You're the mayor. You're not the president or the governor, but the state legislature. But where are we on that?
Well, I think the way in which we distribute methadone is determined by federal law. That's what I learned.
Federal law. Okay.
And so there has to be a change in federal law. And,
big lift.
frankly, yes, that's the problem. And so, one of the things that we could do, though, is to apply for a waiver of federal law to see if we could do something
Test it out.
to test it out. And I think that we've really got to do that, because we've really ghettoized the treatment of opioid addiction, and we see it in all of our communities now.
Yeah.
And I think that there ought to be a groundswell of people saying that this is not how you treat a disease.
So what is the status of that? Are you going to be asking Blumenthal or Murphy, our senators, to apply? How does one apply for a
No,
waiver?
I think that it would have to be the state Medicaid office that would have to apply. And we would have to work with SAMHSA at the federal level, and we would have to work with our Congress people, both the Senate and the House,
To get a
Uh,
waiver for New Haven to test out the idea of having individual doctors prescribe methadone in their offices.
Right.
So you'd
And-
like to see, is that
and
going to happen, you think?
Well, I think we've got to start working on it and get a critical mass of people who, I'm just one person who believe that this is really what
Well,
we've
one
got to
times
do.
mayor's office, let's call it 7.
Well, okay.
but,
I'm
you,
7
but you
people.
need a few thousand, yeah.
Yeah, we do. But I do think that the time has come because so many people, even in suburban communities, have been afflicted with substance use
Oh, God, yeah. Like
around
rural, yeah.
opioids, and it's really time for us to stop so criminalizing all of this stuff and to really recognize that it is a disease. It should be treated that way, and there are people that have training to deal with this disease, and they ought to be able to do it in their office.
All right. And Chief Austin, the fire chief, you've also been working with the mayor's office on data.
Sure.
That one thing you learned from this is you felt we need to track data better on the green and around there with opioid, I'm not going to call them overdoses, poisonings. So tell me about it.
Sure. So, shout out to the mayor for convening not just our state partners, but the treatment facilities, the business community, the proprietors here in New Haven. We're treating this as a city issue and relying on her relationships at the state level to get the critical legislation that we need, the critical support. I mean, we were almost running out of Narcan that day. We were able to get that through the DEMAS office, but what we
State Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services.
correct. And so what we found was that by pulling our dispatch data and also looking at our partners like AMR that use software to track their transports, so they'll track treatments and then they'll track transports, we were able to scrub those numbers. So the initial numbers that were coming in, 60, 70, 80 people overdosing, we're starting to find that they were repeat
I
patients.
remember
if you
sitting
will.
with one of them who'd been coming back, and the guy next to him was smoking. Right when Trump's drug czar was there, and he was talking about how, we're going to keep coming back. It's a
Correct.
good batch.
Correct. So Alfredo Herrera, who's our GIS guru, if you will, in the city.
That's
of
right.
New
He's
Haven.
that young guy at 200 Orange who
Correct.
developed that whole tool
He
for
is
LCI and all the departments. Yeah.
Correct.
Mhm.
He's an
And
app guy.
Yeah, he's been developing apps for the fire department as well.
I didn't know that.
We started having that conversation about if we could pull the data into a dashboard, if you will. Show me a picture of what happened over those 3 days, and we got a chance to do that.
I remember that heat map you showed me.
Correct. Well, it's been updated. This is the new heat map, so now it actually shows an entire year.
Oh,
And so if you look at that spike that's up there, let me try to get that right. If you look at that spike that's there, that was August of last year. What we weren't able to do before was to be able to divide up and dive in granular so that now we could see the substances that are there. Because now we're seeing a transition from K2 to heroin usage. Heroin is on
heroin, not fentanyl.
Yeah.
Because
heroin.
everything I'm reading is that fentanyl is cheaper, it's more intense,
Correct.
and that people are going to fentanyl instead of heroin.
Correct.
But you're
we're-
telling me that's not what we're seeing here.
It's not what we're seeing from the data. So we're continuing to work with our partners and to sort of dive in. This is still the heat map that is still showing our centers. But what this also does is it helps law enforcement as well. So now we start to look at the types of incidents and calls that we're going on, looking at those concentrations, looking at how it's moving through the city.
And where's it moving these days, this heroin?
Well, believe it or
scene?
not, it's coming right in through the bus lines and right off of 95. We can see those overdoses in different communities, and then we see the concentration. And
what is your heat map showing you in New Haven? It's showing you heroin,
Sure.
and it's showing me where. Where
her-
is showing it?
So it's showing us heroin around the green, and it's showing us in the Hill section and in Fairhaven. We've got K2, opioid, methamphetamine, and cocaine use. But the principal driver right now are all opioid poisonings.
Meaning heroin and fentanyl.
Correct. What we're
Okay.
also starting to see as well is the Poison Control Center. New Haven was the first city to adopt the OD map, the overdose map. It's a nationwide tracking system. We were the first to do it. It is the responsibility of the state poison control. State poison control now came out with a program making it mandatory that all EMS providers now feed into that system.
Mm.
So, but initially, Chief Freeman in Hartford and myself were tracking overdoses in our two cities. Now that it's been adopted as a state program, we're able to look at other communities in
Oh,
the state.
cool. So now in the heat map, just so I got it straight, the data you're looking at is overdoses and poisoning that you respond to,
Correct.
where they occur, and what the substance is. And lately, you've been seeing a trend to heroin more than K2. You're seeing it concentrated in Fairhaven and the Hill.
Correct, but it is citywide. If you
downtown.
can look at that whole map, no community, not one ward, is immune.
Mm.
But what we're looking at, it is the transportation centers. So we're looking at the bus routes. We're looking at the parks. We're looking at where the green has become that was always been that transportation hub.
Right.
And we're also looking at where they're leaving treatment centers. If people are being rejected or turned away, are they seeking alternatives? And if they are seeking alternatives, then now we're working with law enforcement.
Tabisa Richie checking in. Thanks for checking in. One of the great local talents in New Haven. So any thoughts, Mayor Harp or Chief Austin, on why the shift to heroin and why it's different from the nationwide trend from heroin to fentanyl? What's this about?
I think it's supply and demand. I really think it's about fentanyl is still cheaper, but you start to see even that day, people were looking for the high.
Mm-hmm.
There were people standing around with Facebook Live,
Yeah.
Snapchat, and
Looking for where to go for it. But
Yeah,
isn't fentanyl more intense than heroin?
Yeah, it is.
So why would they go for heroin instead of fentanyl?
I think people are smart. They know that if you get too much and a bad batch of fentanyl, you can die.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so
Even
it's,
and emergency workers, too. Didn't the fire department have to deal with, and police, that if you're dealing with someone who has been using fentanyl, just a little trace of it can poison you?
That's correct.
So do you always use glove in these situations?
No, not really, because so I don't want to say on the air how we know, because we know that these different combinations are being distributed. People are being educated by the internet on how to self-medicate. And so what happened on what we believe during what happened on the green, what people say the street term is a bad batch out on the street.
Right.
What we believe is that people were trying to tweak that recipe, if you will. And that batch went too far. We know the street name for it. We know the trade name for it. It's been analyzed in the labs. We know the chemical compounds. We know the chemical chain for it. But believe it or not, even that information is being shared.
Right.
And so people will continue to come up with their
the pharmacology.
Yeah.
All right. A question online: is the fire department doing more checks of homes since the deadly fire on West Street? Any lessons from that one?
Sure, there are lessons learned there, but we are continuing to do the types of investigations. We have what's called the uniform complaint. There are members who are out. We always ask the public, if you see something, say something. But we learn from every incident that we respond to.
All right. And then also tomorrow, and that's Tuesday, at 1 p.m., there's going to be an event at the firehouse where you and the other chiefs are getting honored by the group that created a homicide memorial. Marlene Pratt was the mother of one homicide victim, and they did the memorial down by the West River. They got state money. It's going to be a great thing. What was your role in all that?
I had no role in it whatsoever.
Why are you guys getting on it? I'm just trying to figure out fire department.
You asked me was my role on it. No,
okay,
the New
you said
Haven
chiefs.
Fire Department
Yeah.
were the responders, the initial responders who treated the victims as well.
What was the role in the memorial?
That part, I'm not sure.
So they're just thankful for the way you've dealt with
Correct.
the families. And I guess you've been a big part of that, Mayor Harp, from the beginning with Marlene Pratt getting the state money and finding the land by the West River where we're going to have a memorial to the victims.
yes, and it sort of relates to moms against
Gun violence.
guns, and the whole issue that these mothers, they just they're not satisfied with burying their young people. They want to do something about it. They want to do something that highlights the fact that their lives were cut short and taken. These are people who could have contributed to our community and didn't have the chance to do that because of guns.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of firefighters, there was a firefighter in the late 1800s who was in the news the other days in New Haven. You know what I'm talking about?
No, which one?
Augusto Rodriguez.
Yes.
He came in from Puerto Rico. He fought in the Civil War.
Correct.
And
Correct.
last week, there was a delegation of professors from Puerto Rico came to Evergreen Cemetery and said, we're going to talk about this life of firefighter Augusto Rodriguez, because to show the role that Puerto Ricans have played since the 1800s in America. When people are they're not considered Americans. They don't get the same support from the federal government. But he was a firefighter, but he also fought in the Civil War. They dug up his grave and they took a bone back to Puerto Rico. I get concerned. Look, Mayor. You got a bone. It's just like, and they took
away
him
from
back
it,
for a ceremony. Apparently, they have very different ideas than we do here about remains. It's interesting.
Yeah.
And to bring it back in a memorial service in Puerto Rico to talk about Puerto Ricans who have been part of the American project. But he got buried as a firefighter, different name from what he used as a soldier, which is why people didn't know for a long time the role he played both there. But also in terms of Latinos in the firefighting, we didn't know that back in the 1800s there were Latinos Puerto Ricans in the New Haven Fire Department.
Correct.
And that was kind of interesting. Did you know about this last week?
I heard about it, and I heard about the ceremony, but we weren't formally invited. So
okay, so here's my favorite campaign.
Oh, that is correct. There is an event where the firefighters and police officers from Puerto Rico, that was just recently, came to play softball, and the New Haven firefighters and police officers play around to see who will play the team, and we got beat this year. So,
All right. Well, there's always next
Terribly.
ma'am,
Well, have you noticed?
Sorry, I didn't want to bring it up.
Have you
but-
noticed like a Wilbur
ma'am, I
Cross
thought you were
almost the
supposed
entire?
to be in the middle. I thought
Okay,
you-
well, I know. I
yeah.
just wanted to.
Well, Wilbur
Yeah.
Cross,
Set the
almost the
record
entire baseball team was doing very well. Is Latino.
Mm-hmm.
You look at Major League Sports, which I hadn't realized because I had checked out of baseball for a few decades. My wife's watching the games. So many of the players are Latino. It seems to be a trend in baseball.
I think it's a game that is played certainly across Latin America and in Puerto Rico, and still loved. And so they have great players. And so
Okay, so here's my favorite campaign issue of the week, and you both can weigh in on this. Ward 5. There's a candidate for Alder named Germano Kimbrough, whom you and I know very well. And one of his campaign platforms, he wants to prepare people for the 21st century economy, is to teach kids how to operate drones in the schools. Now, I know Chief Alston is all over drones because you guys use drones. As a matter of fact, we benefited from some of your photography. What do you think about that? That's kind of an out-of-the-box idea. You don't have to weigh in if you don't want.
I think it's excellent. I will weigh in. Last week, the mayor sponsored along with Microsoft, a DigiCamp.
Yep,
Right.
yep. You've been that a couple of years
And
now.
we took the kids out to the green, and we took the drone up, and I said, give me some applications that you can use for it. And they were all over it. I think teaching them technology early on, there's so many applications for drones. We've been in quiet talks with Southern Connecticut State University, who offers a recreational drone program and a pilot preparation program. They are going to partner with us to help us develop the drone
the
program.
NHFD.
NHFD and NHPD.
To do what?
Yeah, they're going to assist us in getting our pilots certified, but also we're going
Does
to...
that mean when you're flying the drone, you're flying the drone remotely? You're obviously not in the drone because they're
Right.
only as big as your knee. But I mean, like,
I
you're
wouldn't
called,
fit in
but
one
you're
of
called a pilot.
You're definitely called a pilot. Yeah.
So they're going to help your two departments get certified.
Correct. They're going to do certification preparation, but we're also looking at policy development, because there's a line, very thin line, between reconnaissance and surveillance.
Mhm.
And what many people believe is when they see the drone, they think it's like TV, that we as a city will have a drone that can pick a person out of a crowd and that type of thing.
Like in China.
That technology exists. Those platforms exist, but I can assure you that's not what we're using.
Mhm.
We use the drones for looking at if the lanes are clear on the green when there's a gathering. We couldn't pick a face out if we wanted to,
Right.
unless we hovered like, literally about 20, 30 feet over your head, which we don't do. We look
But you've
at,
been using drones like at big public gatherings
sure,
to see if there are clear lanes to
Sure.
emergency vehicles.
Sure. So you know what happens with the concerts, and anyone that's listening, when you have the concerts on the green, the mayor's been there a lot. People like to put their chairs up onto those walkways, but we actually have the vehicles that we need to get into the crowd to try and treat people during emergencies.
So you've actually used them in a concert to clear away.
Yeah, just to see which areas we need to relay to our partners in the PD that, hey, we need access on the east side. We need them to move the chairs on the Church Street side. Also, many times when a person is fallen in a crowd, you'll see a circle around them. So even though our folks are at ground level, they may not be able to see the victim immediately.
Mhm.
With a drone hovering, you can actually see where that area is and relay that by
Mm.
radio. Our applications that we're looking for in the future, you have a high-rise fire. You're able to send the drone up and look at the location and
Well, you were using them when that collapse happened at Audubon Square a
Correct.
few months ago. So what was the
Correct.
use there? To
Oh.
see where the damage was located
see where the
immediately?
damage was, see the potential of a secondary collapse, be able to direct our crews the right way up, because if the building is falling down, we
Yeah.
have to be very careful where we put our people. So just by throwing a drone up in 3 minutes, we're able to determine where
You
we,
are a tech guy, so you like what Germano's
Uh,
saying. Teach him how to use the drones.
it's my therapy.
All right.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting because tech is crucial now. And then, and Mayor Hart, we talked about this last week. Chief Olson just talked about policy and making sure we keep that divide between public safety and privacy. And you expressed that with the drones for what was the issue we were talking about? Dirt bikers. You said you were a little concerned that if they get too close to those kids riding dirt bikes, it'll be more dangerous and they'll crash.
Well, and also, I worry about privacy.
Right.
To be honest with you, especially in police work. I think people are usually innocent until proved guilty, and I would hate to think that there's some communities that would be have more drones sort of looking at them and trying to take away their privacy than others, and so I really worry that we've got to be very careful when it comes to setting the policy. I think that the fire department, absolutely, I've seen how it's been very helpful in saving people's lives. That building that we had over there on the river, it looked really fine from the outside, but until you got up and saw that the entire roof
I'm sorry,
was collapsed.
which building was that?
Yeah, it was over on River Street and Ferry,
Yeah.
the old brewery.
Right,
Oh, okay.
Brewery Square, yeah.
Brewery Square. Yeah.
So,
That's when this building department then issued the.
yes. And we had to take it down. And a lot of people from the historic, because they could only see the outside of it, they actually wanted us to keep it up. But if it had collapsed, it could have killed somebody. So those kinds of things, I think. So it really requires weighing and measuring and having good policy. I know that the folks at Southern are developing that program. I'm glad that they're developing it. And we've really got to be very careful because already people have lost a lot of their privacy.
Yeah.
And this is one more way. And I know in Beverly Hills, and this was like, I don't know, like maybe 5 or 6, 7 years ago, they have ordinances that make it very clear about what is in the public interest and what is sort of like reducing
You mean Beverly
privacy.
Hills, California?
Absolutely not New Haven.
Yeah, Beverly Hills, New Haven, which is
Oh,
the
yeah,
main
wow.
Beverly Hills by Davis Street School
That's
up in
right.
Upper Fountain. Because whenever people talk about Beverly Hills and movie stars, said, wait, we have movie stars in New Haven? So what do you think of Germano's idea, Mayor Hart?
I think it's interesting for kids to learn about technology. I think it's also important that we think about, and I've been a part of an organization for the past 10 years that thinks about the digital divide, because there is one. And yes, we had Microsoft here, and we were looking at artificial intelligence and teaching young people how to deal with that here in our city. And so, I don't know if drones is the right place to start, but it is, I think, the core idea that young people should have access to technology, understand how to manipulate it, and how it will factor into their lives as adults is really important.
All right, it was really important that I thank you for both coming on today. It's always a pleasure to
Thank you
have
for having me.
Mayor Hart on Monday, and it's always a pleasure to have Chief Olson. We will not mention that Dubai did not check in today, but that's okay. Next time, you're 1 for 2, and that's pretty great. Thanks for joining us today on Mayor Monday. Thanks to Gateway Community College, Birch and Moses PC for providing financial support. Thanks for the questions online and the checking in. And thanks to Harry Droz, the man who does the magic behind the scenes as WNHA station manager. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience, performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night long here at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.